Is the state championship location, do you see that moving around the state in the near future?
Well, I think it's something that we talk about. It's kind of like the alignment process, or the number of teams in the playoffs, depending again on your perspective, that's going to set what you think would be the best way of doing that, right? It has rotated around. And I can remember back before when there wasn't a single site,
Right.
coaches would negotiate it just like any other round of the playoffs. I think that we would acknowledge now that having all of the state championship games at one site, no matter really what the sport is, that's an awesome thing. I mean, that's just great for the kids that are participating. It's great for people who want to come out and see multiple games. I think that this will always be a topic of debate when you get to where. And I think it's always our goal to put these championship games in a first-class, world-class facility. And so we'll continue to evaluate options,
Mhm.
but we've been also very happy with where we are there in the Arlington area.
Hey, Texas high school football fans, welcome back. It's been a few short months, but I've been missing talking about football. And we're only 5 months away from the start of the 2024 Texas high school football season. So it'll be here before we know it. In these next few months, I'll be talking with players, coaches, former players, and many more guests that'll get us excited about the season. And there's no better way to kick off the season than talking with the UIL Director of Athletics, Ray Zepeda. Prior to our chat, we asked you on our socials what questions y'all had and wanted answered. So I asked those and much more. You are going to learn a lot in this one. I know I did, so enjoy.
Hey, Texas high school football fans, it's KP Kelly, your editor-in-chief here at TexasHSFootball.com. Guys, we know that in football, speed is essential, and it's one of the most important things college coaches and recruiters look for. They see your 40 time posted on your social media profiles, but here's the problem. They don't trust the times they see. Did you know the average 40 time is off by 0.28 seconds? That's where our Texas HS Football podcast sponsor comes in. Laser Combines knows that timing is everything. They use the same official timing equipment of the NFL Combine. Laser Combines offers timing that NFL and college coaches and recruiters trust. When every 10th of a second counts, trust Laser Combines. Get timed, get recruited. Check out lasercombines.com.
There we go.
Hi, how are you?
Doing good. I'm doing good. Appreciate you having me today.
Of course, I appreciate you coming on here and okay,
Absolutely.
perfect. Well, I'm really excited to talk to you. I know everyone involved in Texas high school sports, whether it's players or parents, have probably heard the word UIL, but they're not really aware of what all that UIL does and how y'all have a positive impact that has on high school sports in Texas. So I'm really looking forward to getting some answered question. And before we talk about those questions, let's get to know you. You took over as the UIL Director of Athletics back in June. That's a big job as the UIL is the largest organization of its kind in the US. Was that a bit overwhelming at first?
Yeah, I think if I said anything but that, I wouldn't be telling you the truth, right? And so, I do think I had great preparation, as being an athletic director of one of the largest school districts in the state of Texas, there in Cy-Fair ISD, had 17,000 athletes and over 750 coaches. And so having to operate on a scale of that size, it does help you a little bit. But obviously, this is a lot bigger job. And so trying to get used to that when I've been attached to a public school and a public ISD has been different, but it's been a great challenge here, as I enter kind of the last stage of my career.
That's fantastic. And like you said, prior to this position, you were the athletic director at Cy Press Fairbanks. I'm a Houston girl, so I know how good Cy Fair Athletics does things. So how long were you running Cy Fair Athletics program?
Well, I was the director there for about 7.5 years, 8 years, and was attached to Cy-Fair for about a little over a decade and a half. Spent a couple of years there as an assistant athletic director, and then took over as the athletic director. And so that's been a little bit tough to leave my Cy-Fair family, to move to Austin and leave my home area where I was heavily invested. But it's been a good transition. The people here in this organization at the UIL have been very welcoming, very supportive, and like I said, been an interesting, fun challenge for me.
Right. I think change in general, anything is hard, getting up and moving where you've been feeling comfortable. Well, you're still growing and learning, but just stepping into a whole new position can be scary and starting anything new is hard and it takes time to get the swing of things sometimes. So, how have the first 7 months in this new position been for you?
It's been great. I think one of the reasons that I was interested in the position itself was really because of the many close relationships that I had with colleagues, friends throughout the state of Texas in roles that were very similar to what I had there at Sci-Fair as athletic directors, coaches. You know, I coached football for 20 years. And so many coaches, so many athletic administrators, really from all areas of the state that I had close relationships with. So to be able to help them on a daily basis and assist them with the many tasks that they have in trying to assist students and run quality athletic programs, it's been tremendous. And again, it's certainly challenging, but it's always interesting when you in the course of one workday you can talk to people from the Valley to the Panhandle to El Paso. So there's very few jobs in interscholastic athletics that would allow you to do things like that, and so it's been a blessing.
I know Texas is so big and it's so great that you're able to cover it all. With our company, we do the same thing and it's so great that everyone does it differently. So that's so exciting. And now I want to talk about UIL and obviously that's a huge topic, but can you just start by giving us the elevator pitch of what UIL does?
Yeah, well, the UIL has been around since 1910, and you kind of mentioned this already, so you kind of beat me to the punch. It's the largest interscholastic activities association, really in the world. And so, it's one thing to be the biggest, but it's another thing to be the best. And I think that we view ourselves as being really the best organization of its kind. Because of the space that you're operating in, that we take a lot of pride in our athletic programs here in Texas. And so to be able to help to, again, assist with that, to provide the rules and the structures for our athletic programs. I feel like we've got some great professionals here in our organization that do a tremendous job. But in addition to the athletic piece, we also seek to really provide opportunities in academics and music. And so compared to most of the activities association across the United States, very few have all three components under one roof. We're lucky and fortunate enough to do that. And I think our state's better for it. The opportunities that we provide for Texas public school students is really, I think, unmatched anywhere else in this country. And I'm certainly proud to be here and working in this role.
That's incredible that you're able to also expand into the artistic programs and things like that because they do have a large role in game days and in school as general. Everyone has their love. So that's fantastic. And just to know, you're leading UIL athletics for all sports, but we cover football. So I was just going to focus on some football questions before we dig into a few topics. Obviously, you're not the sole decision maker. You have a team. Can you explain how that works? Are there committees for each issue? Or is there a board of directors? How does that all work?
Well, all of our rules are really made by our legislative council, which is a group of 32 public school superintendents who meet twice a year, and really they consider any rule changes that we might have on a yearly basis from our operating rules. And so anybody can come to the UIL Legislative Council meeting and can make a suggestion on a rule change that they would like our legislative council to put in place, and they'll be heard. Their voice will be heard directly. And so the legislative council really is our compass, really sets our direction for our organization. And then directly in our team, we have a team of 8 people here that work in athletics. There's also an academic and a music division that I mentioned earlier with their own directors. And so we work under, again, that legislative council umbrella. And then we, individual staffs, work with our school districts to try to help facilitate the activities in each of these areas.
Oh, that's incredible. I love that there's so many people involved, so many hands on, but it's great to have so many people contributing because it is a lot of undertaking to take on. And a big off-season topic for football has been realignment. The football assignments were released on February 1st. So talk to me about how realignment works.
Well, probably early in the fall, each of the public schools will make a decision on the activities that they want to participate in, and that really then becomes the basis of the alignment process. We're fortunate enough at this point to have computers that help us, and we'll spit out several different models of ways of grouping those schools in our classifications. I explained to someone on a podcast the other day
Mhm.
that our bottom classification, Class 1A, is constitutionally set at 104 0.9 and below. And then I believe that we need to be around 245 schools when it comes to our 6A programs. And so between 6A and between 1A, we're having to then take our enrollment processes and kind of divvy that up in those other 4 classifications. Once you decide the numbers, that's going to decide your schools. And once you decide your schools, then obviously you're grouping them into districts. We try to have about 200 schools in each classification up to this point. And if you look at how the alignment actually turned out, it was right above about 200 schools in every single classification. And we try to not get too far away from over 2 times greater from our bottom enrollment number to our top, if that makes sense to you.
Uh-huh.
And we're pretty close to that in each of our classifications. And then, really once those dots get set of who the schools are, now you're working towards your grouping. Quite honestly, it's impossible to meet the needs of every single dot on that map. You can take care of one need and you're sacrificing the needs from another member school district. So there's probably no perfect map out there. I think that's the challenge of all of it. But I would say, and this as being the first time going through this process on the inside, I was so thankful and impressed with how hardworking our staff was in trying to put that together. And I think that sometimes when you're on the outside, you think that politics enter into it. To be quite honest with you, I really didn't see any of that. I saw a lot of spirited discussion. Probably about 10 different things that we probably didn't end up feeling great about. But sometimes, again, it's not about getting the perfect map. It's about trying to get the best one that we can, given the challenges that we have. And so that process probably takes everywhere from late October until right up to the alignment being released the first week in February. And so a lot of work in December and January as we approach that February 1st release.
Wow, that is a lot of work that y'all have to do, and I love that y'all have computers. I don't know what y'all would do with computers nowadays. They had to do it all by hand before there was even computers. So
Yeah.
thanks
So,
to
so
them.
back in the day, they would have big maps and put push pins in at all
Oh,
those locations and then connect those push pins by rubber bands. And so we've come a long way from push pins and rubber bands to what we're doing now. But I think it does provide interesting topic for conversation. And then also, again, you're opening yourself up for criticism, right? Because again, depending on your perspective, there is no way of getting everyone's situation right as you go through this process.
right, absolutely. It's hard to appease everyone, but everyone, if they have even opportunity, that's the best. And I know there's a lot of things that you have to factor in. So that's incredible. So I know the divisions are driven by numbers, but how are the districts decided? As that's a big question we got on our socials. A lot of people are asking, is there a map to use for that? Or is that computer driven as well?
Yeah, I think that what you're going to do is once you decide your numbers, each of those numbers become a dot on a map. And then you're trying to put those dots together into competitive districts.
Mhm.
Again, sometimes that's easier than others. When you look at our major metro areas like Dallas or Houston, you can somewhat make sense of all of that. But if you're out in El Paso and you've got 4 schools, trying to decide what you're going to do with them is a little bit difficult.
Mhm.
So again, try to work through that the best we can. There's no minimum number that we have to have. We do try to not have more than 10 in a district for obvious reasons. But we try to stay around 8 as much as we can.
Mhm. Okay, that's interesting. And I know there was also a section, it was elevated by request policy. And one of the big talked about ones after the release was DeSoto and 6A. So, how does that come about?
Well, schools do have the ability to opt up if they feel like that it's beneficial for them. A lot of times, I think the original basis of that is really travel, and also you get kind of where they fit and in the area. And again, we try to work with our schools with that approach, but those are individual decisions that that they make.
Mhm.
Obviously, they have the ability to make those decisions on their own.
Right.
The DeSoto piece itself, I think that they just felt for whatever reason that it would be more productive for them to be in Class 6A.
Okay, that's very interesting that you have the option to go up if you need to as well. And there was a lot of talk on adding a 7A division in the future. Do you ever see that happening?
Well, I think those are things that we talk about all the time is
Mhm.
what the future of the alignment process, what that looks like. I would tell you this, we immediately, the day that the alignment was released, later that afternoon, had a meeting about the 2026 alignment.
Ah,
So I think we're always looking at processes for trying to increase competitive equity and what that might look like and how to shape this in a way that's maximally supportive of all of our schools. And
mhm,
so I think we're going to turn over every rock. You know, you can't wait until 3 months before the alignment to have those conversations. So those are always ongoing. And I do think that as our state grows, as the movement of the population moves from some rural areas to kind of what is known as that I-35 corridor or that triangle between San Antonio, Houston, and Dallas, you know, it does create some challenges. And as that kind of since that migration of the population, I think it's going to be incumbent on us to continue to look at the best way of dividing up our schools, which at some point might include some type of 7A.
right. Texas is so big. And like you explained, it's always growing. More people are coming in. So you just kind of have to adjust. And I like that y'all are already having your meetings about 2026 because it's a big decision you have to do. I feel like it's kind of like Super Bowl. Like they're already preparing for, it takes a whole year to prepare for next year. So that's great. And now that all the teams know their districts, they have to get scheduling their games. So talk to me about scheduling. UIL gives the guidance of the week. So do you say who will be the home teams?
No, we really don't. So we obviously set the districts and then we have an organizing chair, like an organizing school or school district that then will kind of take the ball and run with it after those alignments are released. And they will actually draw for their district schedule and decide how they want to handle that. And usually once the district schedules are set, then the individual coaches and school districts will go out and find those non-district games. And so, you know, as a head coach for 9 years myself, as someone that coached football for 20 years, always leading up to the realignment, you try to line up your non-district opponents ahead of realignment and try to make sure that you've got all of your bases covered. And when that alignment's released, then obviously you adjust as need be, whether you're adding or losing games based on how that alignment went.
Mhm,
So we don't decide who the home and away teams are. That's
mhm.
an individual competitive district's decision and how they want to structure that. But typically the number of district games will somewhat delineate what that draw needs to look like.
Oh, okay. So once you guys do that, it's off on their hands. And then, along with making the schedule, the games need officials. So, does UIL work with the Texas Association of Sports Officials, or is that done by the schools?
That's really done at the local level. And so, you know, each of the chapters, officiating chapters, typically will have some means and method for drawing officials for those games. Several areas of the state, you know, the officials chapter itself will actually, you know, assign officials to each of those games once those schedules are finalized. And then in certain areas of the state, like where I was a coach there in Houston area, you would go and you would meet up your opponent with your opponent's coach
Mhm.
week by week, and you would actually draft. And you would kind of go in order week
Ah,
by week, picking your officials randomly. And so,
mhm,
again, different ways of doing that. Different chapters have different means of doing that. That's not something that we kind of control here,
mhm.
but it is something that Tasso does control through their local chapters.
Right. That's so interesting. And I love that you have this perspective of being a head coach because you were that in previous years. That gives you a big advantage. And now let's head into playoffs. I have had a lot of people ask me why four teams because some districts end up putting teams with losing records and it all adds into an already long season.
Yeah, you know, depending again on your perspective, again, there's some old timers out there, some traditionalists that would want us to go back to the days of the playoffs just being for the district champion. I know when I played in high school a long, long time ago, you know, with only two people in, and then we kind of went to three and now four. So, again, depending on your perspective, it's going to kind of lead to what your opinion is on that issue. I think that we're pretty happy with what we have right now with the four teams in the playoffs. Yes, there are some teams that have losing records that do get in. Sometimes, though, those teams with losing records end up being successful.
Mhm,
So there have been many instances where a fourth place team rises up and maybe sometimes beats a district champion, makes it interesting and fun, depending on your viewpoint in the process. But I do think this, again, we can possibly argue or debate how many teams should be in the playoffs, but I don't think there is any debate that at the end of the day, you know, the Texas high school football playoffs in particular are the best of its kind in the United States. And when we show up in Arlington and we put on our state championships and those are broadcast out to the rest of the nation, you know, I think it's the envy of really the rest of the United States. I know that during our state championships this year, you know, we had text messages and emails from, you know, as far away as New York, Canada, et cetera, with people that were tuning in and that were suggesting of what a spectacle that was and how they wish they had something similar to that in their area. And so it's always fun to debate, what's the best way of doing things, how many teams should be in the playoffs. But there is really no debate that our playoff structures in all of our sports are some of the most competitive in this country. And I think it's because of the job that our coaches do, that the caliber of athletes that we have. But I think the matter of fact is we have a very competitive state, right? We like to compete.
Mhm.
And I think that really sets the stage for what is a great playoff structure, no matter how many teams that you have in the playoffs.
I agree with that. It doesn't get better than Texas. And I've been going to the state championship games that y'all have hosted, and like for me for 3 years, and incredible. It's like the big stage, and it's that competitiveness that it drives everyone, and I really like that. So, is the state championship location? Do you see that moving around the state in the near future?
Well, I think it's something that we talk about. It's kind of like the alignment process, or the number of teams in the playoffs, depending again on your perspective, that's going to set what you think would be the best way of doing that, right? It has rotated around. And I can remember back before when there wasn't a single site,
Right.
coaches would negotiate it just like any other round of the playoffs. I think that we would acknowledge now that having all of the state championship games at one site, no matter really what the sport is, that's an awesome thing. I mean, that's just great for the kids that are participating. It's great for people who want to come out and see multiple games. I think that this will always be a topic of debate when you get to where. And I think it's always our goal to put these championship games in a first-class, world-class facility. And so we'll continue to evaluate options,
Mhm.
but we've been also very happy with where we are there in the Arlington area.
That's great, and I do love that how they're all in one place. It makes it easier for like a photographer or broadcaster as well because we can stay and see the whole show and see everyone, and everyone gets equal coverage. So I think that's great, and just like we pretty much with everything, it's just a year by year basis and just see how everything goes and continue to grow. So I want to dig into the topic that is changing sports NIL during the state championship this year at the 2A D2 press conference. Coach Denny Face said high school football is the purest sport out there right now because there's no money involved, no politics involved, and that it's the love of the game, and that really stuck with me. And NIL is getting into high school sports around the country. Do you think the UIL will be able to keep out of Texas high school sports?
Well, right now, I don't think it's us that really keep it out of Texas high school sports. There is a state law in place that prohibits NIL relationships between our student athletes or anyone that's not in college. And so at this point, I don't know if we have a real opinion of NIL, but I do think we closely watch what's happening at the collegiate landscape and
Mhm.
what NIL and transfer portal and things of that nature are doing to the game there. Right now, we have a state law in place. I don't think anybody's ever against really student athletes, being making doing the best thing that they can for themselves. But at the
Mhm.
same time, again, you can look at the collegiate landscape and it's somewhat chaotic at times.
Right.
At this point, we have the law, the law in place. We're going to continue to work with our schools to make sure that there's great understanding about the law and how our rules come into place. And I think that we see that as our role in the immediate.
Oh, I like that a lot. Just understanding and just being educated about that. And it's a big topic. I'm sure you get lots of opinions and always talking about, and it's here to stay. So we look forward to following it in the future. And another topic that it's even more important is player safety. And we know that it's a priority for UIL. What actions does UIL do every year to try to focus on player safety?
I think first and foremost, and I don't think many people know about this, but we have a medical advisory committee that's made up of physicians, athletic trainers that are specifically trained in the areas of sports medicine that meet twice a year. And they really advise us and try to keep us ahead of the curve when it comes to athlete safety. It could be everything from concussions to heat management to cardiac safety. And those are, again, some of the best people in their field. And so I feel very fortunate that we're very fortunate to have that advisory group that
Mhm.
is going to give us wise counsel in the course of their process of meeting twice a year. Beyond that, we do provide a ton of resources. One would only need to look at our website to see a lot of resources that we provide for our member schools to help guide them as they work to keep their kids safe.
Mhm.
And then I think the other thing that we do principally is provide a lot of training for coaches. And so whether that's mandating, again, training regarding concussions, cardiac safety, emergency action plans, et cetera, we also get into the granular nature of even things like heat and cold safety. And so we're going to kind of work in that triangle of our medical advisory committee, trying to stay ahead of the curve there, looking at, again, how can we best provide resources to our school districts, and then trying to train coaches up so that if they ever are in a situation that's an emergency, medical emergency, that they can act in an appropriate manner, in a responsible manner to take care of kids.
Mm-hmm. That's great to know about the advisory group and having those resources, because I know there are so many options for recovery and just staying on top of anything. And education, of course, is key. And so I love that we've been being able to answer so many questions. And before we finally kind of wrap up things, we're going to do some rapid fire questions. They're kind of all over the place, but they're just some questions that our listeners wanted to know about. So this first one is, has there ever been talk about combining smaller schools, especially in those lower divisions?
Yeah, no, not from our point. I think that we view consolidation of schools and how and those are as being local decisions that school districts and individual communities would make as far as to what's in their best interest. I think that if you're a student of history and kind of our alignment process, there are several schools that were at one time or another consolidated neighboring towns, kind of got together and said, hey, it would be more cost effective to do this. But we feel like that those decisions are best handled on the local level, and that communities generally know what's best for their own community when it comes to their public schools. And so that would not be a function that we would do.
Right.
That would be more of a function for individual communities, individual school districts, and we feel they are best suited to make those decisions.
Okay, great. It's left in their hands to do what's best for them. Very cool. And any football rule changes for the upcoming season that fans should be aware of?
Well, I don't know if you're aware or that most people are aware that
Mhm.
we play by NCAA rules here in the state of Texas on the high
Mhm.
school level. And we're the only state, I believe, in the United States that plays high school football by NCAA rules. And so the NCAA does have a rules committee that does meet here in the spring to kind of look at rules for the next football season. They have not met yet, but we're eagerly awaiting the outcome of their meeting so that we can take a look at that. At the present time, because they have not met, I can't point towards any specific
Anything.
rule changes. But other than to say that, hey, they have to meet, and then typically once that NCAA football rules committee meets, we do have a group of coaches, coaching associations, and our staff that looks at the entirety of those rules to
Mhm.
then want to look at, do we want to make any reasonable exceptions to the NCAA playing rules for our high school football athletes. But again, we feel that playing by NCAA rules best prepares our student athletes to be successful at the next level. And I think it's something interesting and unique, given the fact that we're the only state in the nation that plays by NCAA football rules.
Wow, that's a great fun fact. That's so cool. And like you said, it's setting them up for success if they do go on and want to play more in the future.
Right.
That's so cool. And another question, moving on, our video and live streaming are becoming very popular. Fans are craving more. Do you think UIL will ever get involved in improving this, or will it stay at the district level?
Well, this might sound like a broken record, but we are in Texas, and people in Texas really believe on making right their own decisions. And
Hmm.
so we really feel that the way that we have organized this really works best for most of our school districts. We really give them, I think, as you well know, the option of handling that at the local level during the regular season. That allows them to come up with and evaluate the best option for their community, for their kids, for their school. And we really feel like that's probably the best way of doing this. And so I don't see us getting in the middle of that.
Hmm.
I think that there's a lot of great models that are out there. And as you just mentioned, I think that the flexibility that we've given school districts has allowed for a dramatic increase in the amount of games that are live streamed.
Hmm.
And we feel like that's a positive thing. So I don't see us getting in the middle of that anytime soon. I think that we feel that what we're doing is putting our schools and school districts in the best possible place to be successful in that area.
Mhm. That's great. And I do love how you say Texas, everyone is very, has their own opinion. So it's great that each school can handle how they would love to do things. So that's great to hear. And as you can imagine, a lot of people on social media get a lot of good and bad comments. And one question that came up a lot was about recruiting. And obviously it's not allowed. And people say it happens. So what is your response to the comment that always people ask is, why does UIL let recruiting happen?
Well, I don't really feel like we do allow recruiting to happen, to be
Yes.
quite honest with you. I think that we really rely on our local district executive committees to really be the first line of defense when it comes to rule breaking of any kind, and that they're best set up to first of all know when rules are being broken and to B, act when rules are broken. I would say this, and I'm very aware of this as a, again, 30 years in this business as being a coach, an athletic director, and now here at this organization. I would challenge people to really point out areas where there have been substantiated recruiting, where there has been action that has not been taken. I
Mhm.
think that when we're aware that recruiting has taken place, those folks that go through their district executive committee for disciplinary processes and accountability, and eventually will end up at our state executive committee. And so I don't believe that we overlook recruiting. I do think that's a popular topic of conversation, especially out there on social media.
Mhm.
And there's a difference, and I would point this out, between rumors of recruiting and actually being able to substantiate that it's taking place.
Mhm.
And so I do believe that when we're aware of it, we hold people accountable to the rules that we have. And we're
Mhm.
going to continue to do that.
Mhm. Yep, that's great. And I'm sure people always are talking, but I know UIL does everything in their power to eliminate that. So that's great to hear. And finally, my last question, or second to last question, is what are you most proud of looking back at your first football season as UIL Director of Athletics?
Well, I kind of mentioned this a little bit earlier when you asked about the player safety and what we do as far as that's
Mhm.
concerned. When you look back at the historic heat that we had at the beginning of this football season,
Mhm.
I'm really, really proud of the actions of all of the coaches that we have, the athletic administrators, definitely the athletic trainers, everything that was done to not only keep their kids safe during, again, unprecedented heat at the beginning of this season in August and early September, but they also really got their kids prepared to play a very, very high level of football. And so, very, very proud of what was done, I think collectively by everyone involved to kind of keep the train on the track to make sure that kids were safe as their highest priority, but also to get kids ready, to play the type of Texas high school football that we're all very proud of. I
Mhm.
think I would point to that because it's an outcome that's based on the really hard work of so many people. And I think it really expresses not only do we love our football here in Texas, but we love our kids and we take care of them. And so I'm pretty proud of the efforts of all concerned at the beginning of this football season.
It's something to be proud of. And it's great that there's so many athletes that are in Texas high school football. And it doesn't teach them just to be a great athlete, but a great person as well. And there's so many coaches out there that are contributing to people's and athletes' success. And that's so great. Well, this has been so much fun. I appreciate all the information you have shared with us. Before I let you go, I always end with a fun fact at the end of the podcast. So as we wrap up, can you give us one fun fact we didn't learn about today about UIL?
Yeah, I would say this, we have 1,530 public schools that operate under the UIL umbrella, and I think that we have about 850,000 student athletes and 2.6 million that participate in some form or fashion of UIL activity, whether that's athletics, academics, music, right?
Mhm.
So let me go back to 850,000 plus athletes, 1,530 schools. There's a team of 8 people here at the UIL that's working in athletics. So it's 8 of us that are working to help, again, put on everything that you see forward facing that we do, the state championships, the playoff structures, holding people accountable. Like I saw your Facebook posting, all those things that people wanted you to ask and grill me on, right?
Right.
So, everybody wants us to get involved with it's 8 of us here that are working and trying to make, this a great competitive environment for student athletes. And again, I can't say that we always get it right, but I can say that we've got the best thing going. And so I'm really, really proud of not only the 8 people that directly work in athletics, but our entire team here at the UIL. And while there's plenty of areas for criticism, I think that Texas gets a lot of bang for their buck out of our organization. And I think that we're doing it better than anybody else in the nation. So that would be the fun fact that I would leave you with is the number 8,
Mhm.
compared to 850,000. And I hope that at the end of the day, that's something that's respected and appreciated.
Well, you are doing great, and Texas is definitely the best. We're so lucky to have you guys in Texas and being the leading UIL. It was great to meet you. I appreciate your time, and we are looking forward to seeing everything in the future. And we just appreciate
Well,
your
Taylor,
time
thanks
once
for having
again.
me today. I certainly appreciate it.
Hello, Texas high school football fans. This is KP Kelly, the editor-in-chief at TexasHSFootball.com. On behalf of everyone at Texas HS Football, I wanted to thank you for a tremendous season and for your support of our website and our digital media content. And most importantly, I wanted to thank you for your support of the Texas high school football community and the student athletes. Thank you. I also wanted to take a moment to ask you to join us in thanking our podcast and state championship games sponsor, Jamar Roofing. Jamar Roofing is the original Texas roofers for over 50 years. They offer fair pricing, expert craftsmanship, and local owners who care since 1970. Visit them at jmarroofing.com or call 512-441-8437. Because of great sponsors like Jamar Roofing and great fans like you, we're able to provide the content that we do. A big thanks to Jamar Roofing, and again, a big thanks to you.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode. Be sure to subscribe to this podcast and check out TexasHSFootball.com for all things Texas high school football. We'll see you next week.